Strangers in the night, what were the chances of falling in love before the night was through? BSF 2 points, Lanxess 5 points, Ecolab 2 points, 2 points. The strangers in the night. Yes, ready. Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to ChemScore, that sustainability ranking where we look at the 51 biggest chemical companies in the world. We rank these companies in 4 different categories and give them points. The categories are production portfolio, management and transparency, development of safer chemicals, and lack of controversies. After each category, we will give them points, and in the end, we will sum it all up so you will know who is the winner of ChemScore 2024. My name is Peter Piero, and I will be your host for tonight. But of course, ChemScore wouldn't be possible without the brilliant minds of ChemSec, the NGO behind it all. Andy, take it away.
Jirka, the chemical expert. Sonia, the strategist. Patrick, the investor's guide.
All right, Sonia and Jirka, welcome. Are you ready to score?
Yes.
We are. Thank you.
Great. In the first category that we call lack of controversies, we look at the track record of each company's fines, environmental litigations and accidents. And we have the scores over here, so let's take a look at the scores in this first category. All right, there's a lot of 5s, a lot of 3s. Sonia, are there any companies in particular that you want to highlight here in this category?
Well, as you see on the top, so the best scorers are Nippon Paint and Teijin and Wanhua Chemical. And actually, we see in general that the Japanese companies are scoring very well in this category.
Okay.
We always ask ourselves, do we know everything? Is it a lack of transparency in this case? But actually, we also found out that in Japan, there's a legislation where companies have to act very early. And therefore, I think it's quite normal to have them in the top.
How about the other regions, like USA, Americas, and Europe? Are they performing equally well, or are they worse, would you say?
Now, as you see here, we have almost half of them are scoring 0 points. So there are quite many environmental litigations involved. So spills of hazardous chemicals, polluting the environment and the neighborhoods, or also having problems with health issues of workers. And actually, America is not that nice in this category.
But Jirka, are there anyone in particular that you want to highlight from, among the bottom feeders, so to speak?
Among the bottom ones, I think it's most important to see the red thread between them. And I think a lot of the PFAS producers, they are really scoring really poorly in this. And that is, of course, due to the heavy litigations that come with PFAS production. Okay. So a number of these are all PFAS producers.
But is this litigation that goes on all over the globe, or is it in any specific region, or what would you say?
Most specifically, it's in the US, because they have a very litigation-based regulation system. So not so much in Europe or Asia, but also coming strongly, the litigations in Europe, I would say.
But Sonia and Jirka, you've been doing this now for 5 years, so this is the 5th year in a row that we're doing ChemScore. Have you seen any trends during these years in this category?
Well, actually, we see the PFAS litigation dropping in more and more heavy, I would say. So, for example, for Chemos, we are writing now 8 pages of controversies, which is a lot.
And of course, if you want to see the ranking, you can always go to the website, chemscore.chemsec.org, and the ranking will be there in full, and you can see the methodology behind it all and understand how we've come to these points. Patrick, nice to see you. How are you doing over there?
Hi there, I'm very good.
Good to see you. Nice to have you here. you're constantly in talk with institutional investors who invest the money that they manage into these companies, right? How important is it for investors that these companies are controversy-free?
So there's this famous quote by Warren Buffett where he says that it takes 20 years to build a reputation, but just 5 minutes to ruin it. And this is especially the case in the chemical sector, where an accident, such as a fire or spill or the release of hazardous chemicals can have a huge impact on the local community. And this can, of course, lead to lawsuits, it can lead to protests, it can lead to questioning by the authorities, customers and partners might leave, and so on. So obviously this can have an impact on the company's bottom line and ultimately its stock price.
Thank you, Patrick. And we'll come back to you during the night to give the investors' perspective on all these things that we talk about here in the ChemScore ranking. Thank you. So let's move to the next category. Andy, let's hear it. Come on. All right, so that was the first category, lack of controversies. And if we look here, it's a fairly even race so far. 6 points, 5 points, and 0 points. But let's move to the next category, management and transparency, where we look at how open a chemical company is about its chemical production and if it's made any public commitments to stop the production, right? So let's see how the scores end up in this category. Oh my, I'm excited. Let's see, wow, 12 points here. Sabic taking the lead now from Saudi Arabia, last year's winner, right? So Jerker, any particular company that you want to highlight in this category?
Of course, we have to mention LyondellBasell. They score 9 points out of 12 in this category, which is pretty good actually. Coming in second place, we have 3 companies, that's Sabic, Lanxess and Yara. They all 3 score 8 points. So I think it's really good with 9 and 8 points for all these companies actually.
But what is it that make them score 9 and 8 and these high figures? What is it that you look for?
This year, I think it's the transparency, that they are becoming much more transparent on what they are producing on a global basis. And this is something we've been asking we really want them to provide information, what they're producing, and not only what we can see, but also the rest of the world. Okay. Because what is visible to us at this point is EU and US only.
So Jerker, in this category, are there any companies that you want to highlight that for performing not so good? They're in the bottom end.
I think really when you're looking at the regions, for example, the Americas and Asia, they are the bottom performers in this category by far. If we look at the bottom 21 positions, they're all American and Asian-based companies. So it's pretty clear that transparency is not on high on the agenda in these countries. But
we have a stronger chemicals legislation in the EU compared to many other regions. Could that be one of the reasons behind this, that there's some kind of cultural difference that you're used to being transparent about the chemicals that you produce?
That can certainly help a lot, and especially in the EU, we have the CSRD coming. Mm.
Okay, and what does that mean? What is that?
That is a corporate sustainable reporting directive, where you have to provide information on hazardous chemicals and your share of revenue, which is connected by these substances.
Okay. And again, we've been doing this for 5 years now. Sonja, have you seen any differences from when you started to now in 5 years? Have the companies, are they better today compared to 5 years ago?
Well, again, especially the Europeans are really moving. You see that step by step throughout the 5 years, they're really moving in more points, getting more points and moving up the ladder, I would say.
All right, hold up. Patrick, I see you waving your hand over there, really aching to get into this conversation. But let me just ask you first, why is chemical transparency important for investors?
So asset management is risk management. So asset managers are constantly trying to figure out what kind of risks they're exposed to in order to address them. And this is especially a problem in the chemical sector because, as we can see from the scores here, a lot of the companies, they're just black boxes. So it's almost impossible to know what's going on inside their factory, and especially when it comes to the production of harmful substances. And ultimately this can of course hurt the more secretive companies, because investors find it just too risky to invest in them. Whereas on the contrary, the companies that are open and transparent about what they're producing can really gain a lot of trust in the investor community.
So before we move to the next category, let's just take a quick look again to the board here. And we see Sabic, last year's winner, still at the top there, 12 points, but still fairly even. So let's move to the next category. Andy, let's hear it. All right, category number 3, development of safer alternatives. And in this category, we'll look at how much money that these companies put into R&D of new and safer chemistry. So let's see the points in this category on top of the other categories. Here we go, exciting stuff. Now we see Lanxess taking number 1 and Indorama Ventures, who won 2 years ago from Thailand. So a bit different here. And Sabic is down now number 3. All right. Oh, getting exciting, right? Yeah.
It does.
Yes. But okay, so we're talking about safer chemicals and safer alternatives. What is a safer alternative and why is that important?
A safer alternative or a safer chemical is a chemical that does not have the hazardous properties of the worst chemicals. The worst chemicals that we want these companies to phase out, they give cancer or...
Can they also cause infertility?
Yes, infertility, or they are extremely persistent chemicals. All substances like that, we want the companies to phase them out. But of course they have to be substituted with something. And that should be a safer alternative, a safer chemical. And that is, if they do not have these properties, then it's a safer alternative.
Okay.
And that is what we want them to develop. Invest R&D to develop new, safer chemistry.
So these companies in the top here now, they are obviously they are good at this. And are there any particular companies you want to highlight here, Sonja, for this category?
Lanxess does have many hazardous substances, but we see the company really continuously moving in the last years. So they are really committing to phasing out. They have committed for designing out. So we really see an upward move there.
Okay.
And actually, we do have more companies in the second place here with 10 points. Indorama Ventures, BASF is also 10 points, Covestro and Umicore. And all of them, it's in this category, we are looking also at chemical management systems. So do they really screen their ingredients and also take the hazardous properties into account and trying to avoid them? But also we are looking at products, and do they have circularity in mind? So for example, do they use bio-based content? Do they use recycled ingredients? And also, do they really have processes and in mind to produce circular products?
Do you have an example of a circular product?
If you think of food packaging, for example, if your crunchy chips and crisps are in those plastic food packaging, and inside it has to be very dry, of course, yeah, and on the outside it has to look good, and those packaging is glued together, so there are different layers of it. And Covestro developed a debonding possibilities, so you can debond those plastic layers and recycle them. Okay. And I think this is quite a way forward to avoid plastic pollution. Okay,
great. That's great news. Yeah, but so the chemical industry, it strikes me as a quite traditional industry. But now we've been doing this for 5 years. Have you seen a lot of change here in this? Are they getting better at developing safer chemicals?
Actually, yes, I would say so. In the beginning, when we started, we had really difficulties in finding a circular product or also bio-based recycled content. And nowadays, we almost have companies there. Evonik comes to my mind, which have complete product lines with bio-based content or recycled content. So yes, I do think the topic of circularity is is constantly on the mind of many of those chemical companies, and yes, they're developing it further.
And I also know that we award points for having chemicals on ChemSec Marketplace in this category. Yeah, okay. What is that? What is ChemSec Marketplace, and why do we give points for that?
ChemSec Marketplace is a place where companies can market safer alternatives, like I mentioned earlier, because we want the safer alternatives to be more visible. Often and historically, these substances and products had often been kind of hid away on the company website. So it's really difficult for other companies to find these alternatives. So we created a marketplace to make it a more public and prominent place where other companies can find their safer solutions. So, of course, we want them to market their safer alternatives in an active way. And therefore, we award points also if you have substances or products on ChemSec Marketplace. And this year, for the first time, we have all the big dragons, all the big ones. We have BASF, we have Dow, and so on.
Okay. Hey, Patrick, I see you over there, right? How are you doing?
Very good, thank you.
Nice. But so chemical producers, they are obviously making a lot of money from just continuing business as usual, right? So do investors really think that they should just refocus and start developing safer alternatives instead? Why not just continue doing as they always done?
Well, the best proof that investors are caring about safer solutions is that there is a global network of investors called the Investor Initiative on Hazardous Chemicals. So this is by now more than 60 large institutional investors with $20 trillion of assets under management or advice. And one of their 3 key asks is to develop, they ask the chemical companies in ChemScore to move ahead of regulation and develop the next generation of safer solutions. And there's a clear business case for them to ask this, and that's because they want these companies to stay clear of the increasing amounts of litigations that we're seeing, the regulatory tightening that is happening around hazardous chemicals, and to make sure that they can continue to be profitable, not just the 1 or 2 years from now, but 5, 10, 15 years into the future.
And with that, my dear friends, let's move to the final category, category number 4. Andy, let's hear it. Take it away. Oh my, thank you, Andy. Okay, the final category, product portfolio. In this category, we look at the chemicals, the actual chemicals that these companies produce, and we rate them accordingly. And in this category, we will do it a little bit different, because if we would hand out the scores from the start, we would know the winner. So instead, the scores will come after the discussion, okay? And this category, of course, is the most important. I think 18 points is the maximum. Yeah. Why is product portfolio the most important category? Jerker, please tell us.
Because, of course, these are chemical companies that are producing hazardous chemicals and big quantities of hazardous chemicals. So the hazardous properties is the problem. If they would produce safe chemicals, then we wouldn't have an issue with them at all. But it's the hazardous chemicals which are polluting environment and our bodies. So that is why this category is so important to us.
Okay. And let's highlight the good ones here, the good performers.
I think Yara is a very good example here. It's a huge company, but have very few hazardous chemicals. So, of course, it's a very good company in this sense. Mm-hmm.
So in this category, you perform well if you don't produce as many toxic chemicals. That's what we're looking for.
Yes, because it's quite complicated how we calculate things. Mm. So we are looking at the number of hazardous chemicals and also the properties of those hazardous chemicals. If you're producing persistent chemicals, they are penalized because it's a much higher risk, financial risk, and also to human health and environment.
And persistent chemicals, that's PFAS.
PFAS, that chemicals that does not break down. But we're not just looking at PFAS, because there's a bunch of other chemicals which are also persistent, which are not PFAS. So it's an important difference. But also chemicals which are under regulation, be it REACH regulation, candidate-listed substances, or authorization, or even substances which are listed by the Stockholm Convention, POP substances. They're also more heavily penalized by our rating system.
How about the bad ones then? Do you have something for us there that you want to bring up?
The bad ones, actually, there are, I think it's 13 companies which score 0 in this category.
Oh, okay, wow. Oh.
Yeah, so it's quite, the bottom is full, so to say. And the problem with these companies, they have a huge toxic portfolio. And also relative to size, because we want to be sure to have an equal playing field within ChemScore for all these companies. So you can have a maximum number of hazardous chemicals divided by your revenue. A big company can have more hazardous chemicals than a small company. And the difference, when you look at the worst performance in this case, where there's one company, ChemHours, it really stands out. Its toxic footprint by size is twice as big as the number 2 from the bottom.
ChemHours, American company, right?
Yes, and it's a big PFAS producer. They are almost 1/3 or 1/2 of their production is PFAS.
So that's a similarity that they produce PFAS, many of these, zero scoring companies.
Yes, that is definitely the red thread.
Any other similarities that they're from the same region or same size? Can you see something like that?
No, I think it's the portfolio that is the biggest. That they have a PFAS portfolio. One of the red thread that we're seeing is, for example, plastic producers in general. If we're talking quite general terms, we look at all the companies which have a big plastic portfolio.
And how many would you say? How many would you say have a big plastic portfolio out of these 51?
About half of them. Okay. Around half are plastic producers, because plastics is one of the biggest chemical areas for these companies, certainly. But looking at that, and that is also be consistently through all 5 years. If you're a plastic producer, you score considerably worse than the peers. So it's very clear. For year over year, it's the same result.
And you're mentioning it now, talking about year over year. Sonja, any changes have you seen in the last 5 years?
Well, actually, we see not a lot of change. This seems to be, a long-term possibility for the companies. And I think it will be, or it is a difficult topic for them, because you have to change facilities, production lines, and so on. Nevertheless, we see companies who are really motivated to go down. For example, we had Lanxess with a high number of substances in the beginning, and they phased out a few.
Jerker mentioned Yara as a top performing company in the product portfolio category. Do you want to highlight any specific companies here?
Well, also Yara, this is really the most outstanding company this year, with really very little hazardous substances in their portfolio. In second place, we do have Nutrien, a Canadian company, and Ecolab, an American company.
Okay, and let's see if they can make it all the way when the final scores are awarded. But before that, Patrick, how about the investors? Do they care about any specific chemical group, or are they all equal?
Well, so obviously PFAS is number 1 right now, and the reason why is because it is being regulated around the world as we speak. It's also becoming a huge litigation issue, especially in the United States. So that's why some are referring to PFAS as the next asbestos, and no investor want to have a big exposure to the next asbestos. But basically all persistent chemicals, that is chemicals that don't break down or are very slow to break down, is a big problem for investors. But then also there are other chemical groups that are problematic, for example endocrine disrupting chemicals, basically all chemical groups that might become the target of regulation or litigation down the road.
Right. And you mentioned that they don't break down, and that's a problem. Is that because they're worried that this will come back and bite them in the end if they invest here, or can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, for one thing, if you are a long-term investor and you're thinking about owning a company for a long time, chemicals that don't break down or are very slow to break down might become an issue 5, 10, 15 years from now. So even though the company is doing everything right then, just because they had this big production of persistent chemicals now might bite them then.
Patrick, thank you very much. And with that, we're about to reveal the winner of this year's ChemScore, and we're going to award the final points in the product portfolio category so we can know who's the winner. And I think, Andy, can we please get some suspenseful music here, because I'm dying and I need someone to take the tension off me. Wow. And let's see if we can also see the points. Here it comes, here it comes. Oh my God, it's Yara, Norway. Kjempegreit. They're from... in the top there, Sabik, last year's winner, number 2, and Indorama Ventures, number 3.
Bravo!
Wow. Who could have guessed? Jerker.
I would say that Yara is really the winner this year, only thanks to its transparency.
Okay.
It's open what they're producing on a global basis, and they have a very small toxic portfolio in relation to its size. So I think that is really the winning concept of Yara. They gained, I don't know how many points this year, just due to this fact.
Fantastic. Sonja?
Yes, I also really like the results, and that we have now in the Bs even 4 companies, and some of them are there, like Indorama, for a long time, but the others are really working on it step by step and moving ahead, and therefore I'm really happy to see the results this year.
At the very end here, we have ChemHours, a D, 8 points, not really good at all. Jerker, you want to comment?
Yeah, I think we mentioned it both in the first category and the last category. They have so many controversies connected to their PFAS production. Of course, that is of no good, so you can't get any score for it. They have very little development of safer alternatives. They don't really have any management and transparency. And they are producing so much PFAS, it's a rock solid 0 in category 1.
The PFAS is really hitting many of those PFAS producers.
And if you want to understand how we did this score, you can always go to the website, of course, and learn about the methodology there and how we come to this score. But when I look at this, I see many Americans there at the bottom. We have Honeywell, that's an American company, right? 3M, Westlake, ChemHours. But why do we have so many Americans in the bottom? Is it PFAS?
If we look at 3M, Honeywell, ChemHours, DuPont, they're all PFAS producers.
You mentioned BASF, the world's biggest chemical company. They're scoring C-.
Very average.
Yeah.
And actually, there's not any movement for the last few years. BASF is always at the same level. And we really would like to see the biggest company moving and showing it publicly what they are doing.
You expect more of them?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Anything you want to say about these? Number 4, number 5, and number 6. They're always up there every year, no?
No, I think, for example, Lanxess, it's quite interesting to see they score 0 in hazardous product portfolio, but still they had 23 points. So it's possible to have good forward-looking, good management and transparency, and still have a toxic portfolio. So this is the reason why we have chosen these 4 different categories to look at, because you can choose which angle is the most important for you, from your perspective as an investor, or as if you're a customer, you want to know what is my supplier, what are they up to. So you can really choose to see which perspective you focus on.
Patrick, what are your reflections? Are your phone ringing now? Investors are asking where they should place their money. What's happening over there?
Well, of course, I think what the investors are interested in is the best practices. So they want to see who's doing, the best, who has the best phase-out plan, who has the best policy for developing safer alternatives. So what I'm really looking forward to now is to dig into these scorecards a little bit more and see who really have the best practices that the investors can bring to the discussions with the companies and try to show the companies what's actually possible.
All right, stick around. We're going to talk a little bit more, but first I want to hear some lovely tunes. Andy, let's take it away. Let's hear some of that beautiful music. So So now we have all the points and we know the scores. Yara in the top. But before we move on and we finish up the show, we would like to have and hand over to Sonja, who's been looking at the opportunities for improvement. What can these companies do better in the coming year to score even higher in the ranking?
If you have listened carefully, you would probably guess them. The first is transparency. We really need more transparency to be able to really understand the financial risks and the risks those chemical companies do have. And secondly, we definitely want a phase out of hazardous substances. And at the moment, our priority is to get rid of the PFAS. PFAS is really a pollution crisis we have out there, and we really need to turn off the tap of PFAS. Therefore, phase out of PFAS is very important also to our financial investors. And the third is the opportunities. There are millions of opportunities out there to produce safe alternatives to PFAS, but also to other hazardous chemicals. And therefore, there is where I would like to put my money into, in those chemicals with safer products which will have a market for the future.
Okay, so increase transparency, show us what you're producing, right? Stop producing PFAS and start making safer alternatives in a nutshell, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay. And you've been doing this now for 5 years, the ranking ChemScore, and we're getting more and more traction, more eyes on it every year. What do you have? What plans do you have for the future, Jerker or Sonja?
There is a new regulation in Europe which is called CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, and this will start next year. So there we will see new information, new data.
Chemical companies need to follow this regulation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
they have to follow this regulation, and we will get much more data.
But will this be incorporated already next year in ChemScore, or will it be further down the line?
We will start to include that already next year.
Jerker, looking at the ranking, there's a lot of C's, there's a lot of D's, a B here and there, no A, really. And I think that begs the question, is it possible to score an A in ChemScore, or is the ranking too hard? Is it possible?
When we look at the best performer in each category and each score, we get an easy A. So some companies are really good in one category and really good, another company is really good in another category. So picking the best one from each category, you get an A. So it's definitely possible to be an A-grade company in ChemScore.
Patrick, my brother from another mother, what do you have to add to this?
Well, I mean, we've been doing this for 5 years now, and what's clear is that we have so many more investors who cares about all of this. And as I understand it from Sonja and Jerker, you know, who's been around now and done this for 5 years, it's incredible to see all the investor interest and our investor initiative that we help to coordinate by now. More than 60 large global institutional investors, more than $20 trillion of assets under management or advice, really interested in the results in ChemScore. So, I mean, we've been doing it for 5 years, and I think that calls for some champagne.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah. Good idea. Yes.
Here we go with the champagne.
All right, here we go. Some champagne, some sparkles for you guys. And yeah, cheers. Cheers to you. And cheers to you who's watching this. Thanks for being with us all the way and watching it to the end. This is the ChemScore 2024. We're done. Yara, kjempegreit from Norway, the #1 winner. With that, thanks again. Thanks to you. Andy, let's hear some music. Cheers. Woo!
Incredible that Yara ended up on top this year.
Who would have guessed?
But I also thought Lionel Bassell
Of course, you can always go to the website chemscore.chemsec.org to find out everything, the ranking, the methodology. Just go there and look it up.